This better? This morning we're going to talk a little bit about the protection of our children and what we can do as far as a policy to make sure that happens and stays in place. We've certainly seen a lot of issues in churches in the past several years where children have been exploited, and we want to make sure that nothing like that ever happens here. So we have the advantage at Grace that we can take a proactive approach in putting a policy together to protect our children rather than a reactive approach. Church Mutual is our present insurance carrier. They've been endorsed by the GLCWR as the insurance carrier of choice. I believe right now they're representing more than 3,000 UCLA churches. And with me today is TJ Fectu. He's our current agent, and he'll like to talk about the what's, whys, and hows to put a policy together to ensure that we keep our children safe.
Thank you. So as mentioned, my name is TJ Fectu. I'm with Church Mutual Insurance Company. I am your current account manager. I work under Peter. I'm kind of his right-hand man as far as that goes. A little bit about my history is I worked as an underwriter with Church Mutual, and as an underwriter you probably can assume that I reviewed claims, I reviewed a lot of insurance policies, especially more of the West Coast. I read a lot of claims, and as you can imagine, not all of them were positive. So truly one thing dear to my heart is protecting the children of congregations. Formal, because again, we are the responsible parties, supervision, all of that. It is a true statistic that Church Mutual does receive one claim a day related to misconduct or molestation. And a lot of people think, it's adult on adult or adult on child. And that's not always the case. Oftentimes it'll be child on child. Okay? So again, there goes that lack of supervision, where two children run off into a closet, or even more, just, I don't want to say curiosity, but it does happen with young children. They don't quite understand, and once the parents find out, it explodes. Okay, so child on child is on the rise, of course. Adult on child, adult on adult, and I often say it's not always your people that offend. Okay, it could be simply a contractor that's on the premises. I've seen horrific claims where it has nobody to do with the church, okay? It was simply at a rest stop. Again, it happens due to lack of supervision. So, kind of going on that path of putting policies and procedures in place, sticking with them. Again, it does take a team to continually monitor the background screen. Church Mutual does have a program, a partnership in place with Trusted Employee. The background checks start at $5.75 a check, which is very, very, very cost efficient from what I've seen in the marketplace. What you're receiving with that step one is the criminal background check, which is also important because again, you want to know that they're not a felon. Okay. Then you're pulling a registered sex offender, so that's doing a nationwide check of the registry. And then the third part of our background check is doing a social security alias. So how that's really going to protect the church is if I'm bouncing around, changing my name, going from state to state. Again, some churches are known as soft targets, forgiving, trustworthy. You're going to be able to pick up on those. Church Mutual has that background screen program. It is on our website. The one thing key there is you do have to have an authorization form to conduct that background check. The good thing about that authorization form is that's your first step in all of these policies and procedures. Because if I'm a newcomer, I'm going to use the example just because it's easier. I'm a newcomer to your church, nobody really knows me, and I want to jump right into the youth. You can be like, well, sir, we have these procedures, probationary period with the church, have you a member, and then fill out this authorization form, it eases that kind of awkward conversation, if you will. Again, I know you want volunteers to help, you want newcomers to your church, but there is some protections that need to be placed there, okay? So that's the first part. Authorization authorization form, background checks, keep those on record. That's so important to actually keep it on file that you have conducted the background checks, okay? Then the second part to all of this is going to be training, okay? Church Mutual, we have policies and procedures. It's a nice little booklet that a lot of churches have used. And we often fundamentally go off of our risk control consulting. They review a lot of the policies that churches put together, so that's a resource that's always available to you. You can either go through me, I'm going to have my business cards today, or it's a direct contact with our risk control consulting. They do a really exceptional job. They have the attorneys, they have the experience to kind of review those procedures. So, just to review, background checks, training. Training is going to really consist of what your tolerance and proper procedures are to non-related adults with a child at all times. So you never have that opportunity where there isn't a witness or an accusation could arise, okay? Accusations can be just as damaging to the reputation of the person and the church than obviously a true claim too. Because again, it's handled very, very strictly in the community. So having two non-related adults at all times, supervising, making sure that you know proper touch, a hug or a shoulder, it's all up to the church. Now, we will be there to assist you in setting up those. So again, we do have a sample policy, but that's key there. Okay, so background checks, training, and policies and procedures. Okay, those are kind of our three stool for preventing this type of occurrence. Okay, the last thing I can really just say is supervise. As you mentioned in the beginning, that it's not always your church people. Okay, I've seen some really, really tough claims as far as at rest stops, contractors. It could be an audiovisual contractor on the premises that you have no idea who they technically are. You have every right to run a background check on them. Okay, especially if they're going to be a long-time contractor. Okay. Any questions or concerns so far? Again, church. Go ahead.
So if we don't have anything in place, well, like right now, we already have a lot of volunteers with our youth.
Okay.
So how have you seen churches implementing things
Sure.
like that?
So the question was, currently don't have any policies and procedures in place right now, have quite a bit of volunteers. How do other churches start to begin that process? Basically, you could almost use us as the, I don't want to say scapegoat, but the insurance company has these best practices that we should have in place, okay? And then when you run into that, you might have some people that are like, well, we've done it this way for this long time. You can just simply, again, say that Church Mutual has these best practices in place. We really do want to protect our children, our congregation, ourselves for this type of occurrence. We just don't want to see this type of a situation happening on our property, okay? So jump right in. When you have your volunteers, get a list, and then the ones that work directly with children, get the authorization form, and then again, conduct the background checks, and then ease into having them sign off on the policy procedure. Again, I think you guys have to take a step back and put that together with the assistance of hopefully Church Mutual, and then start rolling it out, but I would start with the background checks first. Okay? Does that answer the question? Okay.
How many claims are you seeing coming through?
So the question was, how many claims are we seeing? Again, I mentioned probably it's estimated one a day, average. So it could be, again, we do nationwide, camps, schools, senior living, churches. So it does happen. Now, again, some of these are accusations, but they have to be investigated. The church still has to defend in court of law that it did or didn't happen. Okay. When I talk about the misconduct coverage, I'm going to tie in a little bit about this. Your misconduct coverage, the legal defense is all outside the coverage limit. That is very, very important to Church Mutual Insurance Company. Because if it costs $250,000 to defend in the court of law, you would always have your coverage limit for any settlements. Okay? And when I say settlements, it could be, again, being proven negligent that you weren't supervising that individual. So again, to answer the question one more time, typically we see on average one a day, and it's across any denomination. It does not discriminate. Okay.
For the background checks, how confidential is that? Is there a process in place where if the church is doing background checks, only a certain amount of people have access to those?
So the question was, especially just for the viewers of YouTube, how confidential are the background checks? And they should be confidential. You're going to probably create a committee that are going to, again, follow up with all these policies and procedures, and then conduct the background checks. Okay, so if it's a committee of 4 or 5 individuals, they'll be issuing the authorization forms, and then going on, again, trusted employee, it's on our website, and conducting the background check. Once it's cleared, you can shred it. You don't have to necessarily keep that. It's a beautiful PDF, so you don't even have to print it, if you will. So you do want to keep it somewhat confidential, and when something comes up, obviously involve your leadership and pastor, of course. Okay, so they can be considered confidential. Okay, keep your team, make sure that they know, your leadership knows, because something may come up, and then you would have the policies and procedures after that. Again, we will work through that with you. What to do if somebody has kind of flown under the radar. Okay. Any other questions? So, step 1 will be doing the research of policies, procedures. We'll get you a sample copy of what we have. I know the Synod has a copy. I'll also send you a link there, Jim. And then we'll put together that policies, procedures, and then obviously get to the authorization form. I would use Church Mutuals just because, again, it is concrete, it is a legal document. And then we'll just start rolling out once you guys sign off on your procedures, start rolling out. Even if you want to do little by little, chunk by chunk, starting with Sunday school, we'll be there to assist you. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody. And I do have some materials up here, including my business card. If you have any questions, cell phone, email, again, really great resources up here. Okay.
And one of the things that the Madison Synod did is they put together a policy to take care of the entire Synod. So I believe all the churches in the Madison Synod are now protected by that policy. Now our Synod up here has not done that yet. So again, we feel that we're in a good position to take a proactive approach to this and put a policy together before anything would happen. I volunteered to be on that committee. Pastor Michelle and Kevin will also be on it. And we'd like 2 members of the congregation to join us with it so that we can review things. Anybody that's interested, certainly either see me or Pastor Michelle, and we'll get something started. I think we have a lot of resources to begin with, and then we can use those resources to form something that would be unique to Grace itself. So if there's an interest there, please contact me or Pastor Michelle. And certainly TJ will be a big part of that. We'll keep him involved with it. When we set our meetings up, possibly he can join us for 1 or 2 of those to help us keep us on the right track, make sure that we're doing things the right way. Any other questions?
Is this insurance that we need to buy for this, or are we already insured? We're already insured.
Yep, you're already insured.
Yep. How we operate, or how we protect ourselves.
I believe these all follow the liability coverage, right?
Correct. So every package policy that Church Mutual rolls out, again, being a niche company working with religious or nonprofit, every single policy does include some sort of sexual misconduct, molestation, liability coverage. So yes, you are currently covered for it if something tragic were to happen.
What's the pros and cons of either having a policy or not having a policy in place? Briefly.
Yeah. So not having a policy in place is when something does happen, you just open yourself up to major liability. And again, nothing is going to change that child has been affected. So I always say that that's number one, because claim dollars mean nothing. At the end of the day, it's that child or adult or, protecting them. And then the second part is yes, yeah, you're going to go through this. News, media will probably get a hold of it. You're going to be on the news. I'm sure you don't want grace being publicly thrown out there of, they didn't protect. Okay? So the key thing there, and when I do my renewal meetings, I kind of paint a picture as far as, many of you probably are leadership or have been with the church for a while. And what's going to happen is, if something happens, they're going to do an investigation. Okay? So anybody that's involved, decision maker, they can possibly be brought to the stand. And when the DA is asking, well, what did you do to protect that child? It's not too fun to look at them and say, well, we didn't do anything. We didn't have any policies, procedures in place. So I don't want to say it's good, because again, these things are tragic, but it's important to be able to say, well, we did this to protect that child or those people. Again, I always refer to child, because again, that is 9 times out of 10 the case, but it's not discriminatory just to children. So it's important to be able to say, we did this, at least to mitigate some of that, because again, a lawsuit, if they see that an organization is just truly negligent, it could wipe out a church or another organization. Okay.
What is the standard in those types of cases of a church protecting them from being liable? Is it just showing that you've done reasonable steps towards
Right.
protection and following through with those policies and procedures on a regular basis, or is it?
So I'm going to try to answer that question to the best of my ability, because I'm not an attorney, but it truly is important to be able to say, hey, we did do everything we could. Now that doesn't mean that the limit of insurance wouldn't be exhausted.
Right, but
Yep.
it might lower the.
Yes. Again, nobody ever wants to say it. Again, even as an insurance person, we want to cut the money or anything like that. But if you ever exceed that limit of coverage, then you're out of pocket. And that is truly dangerous in that aspect of keeping the church running. Because again, once you exhaust your limit of coverage, typically it happens if it's multiple people. Typically, an organization is sustained, depending again on the coverage limit, the amount of youth, sustain one claim. But once you start getting the multiples, it could be devastating to the organization itself. Okay.
Another reason, importance of having policies and procedures is also so that we're not just spinning our wheels when an accusation comes up, you know what to do to start taking action immediately, because that's going to come up in court as well.
Jim used the perfect word, being proactive versus reactive. I've had churches, and I've been out here for almost 3 years now, where they give me a call Sunday afternoon and say, hey, TJ, we just had just kind of this odd situation happen where somebody drove 2 hours to meet with us, and they wanted to jump right in with the youth, and I just didn't feel comfortable. And I said, well, Pastor, you can fall back on your policies and procedures. You have a probationary period. You have these steps in place before you can jump right in with the youth. Okay? Again, totally be respectful and understanding that it's a volunteer role basis. But again, it is important. And it's important to have a few people on backup that have gone through the training and all of that. So when the individual can't be or is sick or etc., that you always have somebody else that's already gone through the process to fill in.
Does having a policy in place have any effect at all on our insurance costs?
Most definitely. So, underwriters, again, my previous life, underwriters do like to see that organizations are proactive. Okay? With having policies and procedures in place, you would be eligible for higher limits of insurance. Again, with this coverage limit or this amount of dollar, underwriters are very strict on which churches or organizations, again, as we insure across the board for the most part, your eligibility. So without having some of these procedures in place, a church wouldn't be eligible for, let's say, a $500,000 coverage limit or $1 million coverage limit. And sometimes it's required by other organizations to have those limits. So if you, I want to say can't, that is the right word, can't get the coverage, You might not be allowed into, let's say camp, or it's a lot has to do with schools, but still. So eligibility there is a key thing there. So if you don't have some of these things in place, your coverage limits are withheld. Okay? So again, overall, it's just so important. I know I'm not a father or anything yet, but I know if my child were to attend, an organization or school, I would want to make sure that they're doing everything to protect my child too. So definitely very, very important, and I'm sure as conversations come up, I bet you your congregation will agree and understand too that this is why you are rolling out these checks.
Have you seen a lot of resistance from churches, from volunteers, where they do not want to have a reference or a background check made on them? And how do they handle those situations?
So I've probably, out of thousands of churches that I've seen or been with, only one church or one congregation that I really saw pushback on. I guess my question to them would have been, why? Why are your people pushing back? If you have one individual pushing back, then just don't let them with the youth. And I don't mean to be blunt, but it's pretty standard to get a background check nowadays, and just to make sure that you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's. So if you have one individual, just say, well, you can't work with the youth because this is what we have set up for rules. If you have a congregation that doesn't want to do it, my first question would be why? Why don't we want to protect our youth? Why would we not want to toughen up, especially in today's tragic society sometimes? We could talk about Arvin Schroeder, it goes on and on and on. So my question would be why would the congregation not want to? And I'm sure they would come to see that it is important not to be seen, especially as a soft target. Okay?
Where I can see that coming up is about a year ago, Pastor Scott, on the conference, we were discussing what a welcoming call. Is it that anybody can participate in any ministry in our congregation? Or can we put restrictions on that and still say we're welcoming call? So that's where a congregation could push back. Think about it in that term.
And I think in the scenario where I robbed the bank 20 years ago, now you're asking me for a background check. I don't want everybody in my church to know I robbed the bank 20 years ago, because it hasn't happened since. It's got nothing to do with working with the youth, but so then I choose not to go to this church because it's force a background check.
This is where I think this is getting it spelled out in our policies and procedures.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Because it might need to, or you choose that yes, they can in supervised situations. Always have another adult. Another way to handle bridging that gap. So.
You gotta use the microphone.
Yeah. And I truly think that goes where it's confidential. Make them assured that, we are just looking for a sex offender, okay, for a registry. Now, I obviously, we have our partnership with Trusted Employee, but there are other ways to do checks. You go on the FBI website and just slowly look up the sex offender registry. Again, I worry about those sometimes because, again, people can change names. They are trying to hide from their past. But, again, Trusted Employee is my number one recommendation. But if people do start to push back about my criminal background 20 years ago, you can always just do a sex offender registry because, again, that's really what we're here for and protecting today. Now, again, criminal is criminal too, but I would have your congregation rest assured that it is just a small committee. I mean, literally, you could even just say it's only pastor. The committee's doing all the work, the pastor's doing the background checks, okay? So then it's in between the pastor, the individual, and the man upstairs. So that can really help with that trust and confidentiality confidentiality there too. So it's not being, because again, I know people talk, you know. So I think if you have that trusting thing where pastor's the only one that knows, and again, I know they have probably a full plate of work, but I think that can ease up some of the tensions there too. I do truly understand that I shouldn't use me as an example, but does my history have anything to do really with the children? And again, that's where your tolerance and your policies come into play. Again, we're not saying a convicted felon can't be with the children at all. It's just the sex offender registry. Okay? But
So my background is human resources, so obviously I've done lots of those background checks. And so just so people know, people who are hired here at Grace go through a background check, including the national sex offender and that kind of thing already. So rest assured, we already have that for our Grace employees. I did recently begin volunteering at another organization that is not specifically geared to children, and I, as a volunteer, just for that organization, had to sign the authorization to go through the whole background check. So it's not super unusual now.
right.
That,
Even with my job,
Right.
adding my fingerprints and
yeah, and all the organizations that I've worked with, both in the past nonprofits and in the private sector, for employees, we've always done background checks. So it's really standard. It's just a little bit unusual now for volunteers. Organizations are just starting to get into using that.
I know our local schools probably started 4 or 5 years ago doing background checks on all the volunteers that come into the school.
not to go on a too long story here, but we have schools now that scan the ID of the individual or do a fingerprint, even at the door, so they control their environment of who they're allowing in, what, it goes on and on and on. I think that's just where technology has kind of brought us to. It's becoming more efficient, but again, ultimately just protecting the organization. That's key there. And I know, especially with HR, there's probably a lot of laws, even with confidentiality included in those. So again, I understand people are volunteers. It's hard to run them through some hoops, if you will. But again, ultimately, it is important. It is important to protect the organization, and as the leadership of the church, it's important to protect yourselves too.
Yeah, and I think part of our policy would certainly incorporate who can see these background checks, where are they going to be kept, who has access to them, so that we can protect the confidentiality of the people that have been checked. So it's certainly not going to be something that's going to be left out. And I'm sure, Mary, at your church or your place of work, that's exactly what happens. So that would all be part of the policy that we'd be writing up to make sure that confidentiality is maintained.
Most definitely. You could walk into discrimination suits. Again, confidentiality is key there. And again, I think I use the pastor's example, just because again, pastor's usually the family member, if you will.
So I guess one challenge with the confidentiality and how you deal with that is how do you, so say all of our volunteers have been checked, but how do we stop? We don't have somebody that's seen the list of people that have passed the background check standing at the door when we go into Sunday school. So that's something we'll have to talk about. How do we follow through with verifying only the people that have gone through the background checks are working with our kids?
That definitely potentially could be written in the policies and procedures. If I were to ask a question of how many people work with the youth on a regular Sunday basis or any other service day, maybe a handful? Okay. Again, I have schools that, they have 60 employees, and I definitely understand that. But again, having that committee will really structure. It'll be nice. Once the ball gets rolling, it'll be smooth. And again, it's... Yep. And...
call me on Sunday morning and say, can you help Janet? Because I'd have to say, no, I haven't had a background check.
And that's where I kind of led into having a few, I call them substitute teachers, if you will. One thing that when I do my meetings too is I put together packets. We have really beautiful folders, and I put the resources in there. What I would look forward to working with Grace is creating orientation folders for you. I know that's one thing Church Mutual does have in our risk control consulting, materials that you can order for free or at no cost. But I would like to go a step further and kind of build you folders, so when you do have a new volunteer or substitute teacher, that you could literally just hand them the folder. On the top it would be sign here for their authorization form, and then you'd have your sign off form that they've reviewed it. Now again, if you do training in person, of course that always helps, but I would look forward to maybe creating a orientation folder for you for this program, and that's something that we would definitely work with and work through down the road. Any other questions?
I know throughout your presentation you mentioned a couple situations that have arose. That can you give some more examples of things people might not think about that we might need to consider when we write our policy?
So the number one is, what happens when you have a known sex offender? That's probably the number one question I receive. Well, it's not a witch hunt. It's just a true fact. Fact of law, fact of the hazard. So my number one question I probably receive is, well, we do have known sex offenders. There are policies and procedures Church Mutual actually requires. It's very black and white. I'm not going to go through them right now, but there are procedures in place that Church Mutual requires that are in place when this type of situation happens. So that's probably my number one question I receive is, what happens when we do have known sex offender? Church Mutual would walk hand in hand with you on that. The underwriters actually do get involved. And it is very definite as far as there's no leeway. Okay? So that's probably number one question. The number two question I often receive is, how often are we supposed to be conducting background checks? Typically we do recommend every year. I always say depending on the number of people. Again, when you have a lot of volunteers, maybe every other year, but Church Mutual's best practice is every year. Okay, and at $5.75, we do try to make it affordable for our churches. Okay.
I don't need to say anything.
Well, thank you everybody for your time. Again, I do have some resources above in front here. It does have my business card if you want to shoot me an email, phone call. Jim will obviously be working together, and we'll definitely get our risk control consultants to help us assist too. Okay? Thank you everybody for your time this morning.